At a busy construction site in London, the workers suddenly stop what they are doing after uncovering something buried underground. It's a bomb! News of the discovery quickly reaches Chief Superintendent Zuzana and Military Sergeant Dutzy. The information is then passed to Major Will Tranter, who examines the reports and identifies the object as a Second World War bomb. Based on its size, he estimates that anyone within 800 meters could be in danger if it explodes. With no time to waste, police begin clearing the entire area. Officers move people beyond the safety perimeter, including an Afghan family who are forced to leave their apartment along with everyone else. Soon afterward, Will arrives at the site and explains the seriousness of the situation. According to him, the device is comparable in size to the bomb that was safely detonated in another location a couple of years earlier. Even worse, there's no guarantee it will remain stable. In theory, it could go off at any moment. The operation becomes more complicated when the team discovers that a 400 kilovolt power cable runs directly beneath the construction zone. Because of that, electricity across the surrounding area must remain shut down until the bomb is dealt with. Although the evacuation appears successful, nobody realizes that a small group of men is still hiding inside the restricted zone. As engineers remove the standing water around the bomb, those hidden men quietly put their own plan into motion. Wearing boiler suits, they make their way into a row of storage units and enter Unit 79. Once inside, they unpack equipment, switch on battery-powered lights, and install a CCTV camera aimed at the entrance outside. They also run a cable from their setup to a nearby dustbin. Concealed inside the bin is a generator. As soon as it starts running, power flows to their equipment and they begin cutting through a wall. Just beyond that wall sits a bank. Partway through the job, a police car drives past. The men immediately stop working and wait in silence until it moves away. At the construction site, Will continues inspecting the bomb and soon discovers something alarming. The device contains two separate fuses, and one of them is a time fuse. He attaches a microphone and listens carefully. A ticking sound can be heard from inside. The moment everyone realizes what that means, they rush to cover. The bomb could potentially explode at any point within the next 48 hours. To buy time, Will places a magnetic clock stopper onto the fuse and retreats with the rest of the team. After a tense moment, the ticking finally stops. With the fuse temporarily disabled, preparations begin for the next stage of the operation, which involves building a mitigation wall before carrying out a controlled detonation. While the military team prepares for the controlled blast, the men beneath the bank continue their operation. Their equipment is now cutting through steel, bringing them closer to the vault area. As the work progresses, Corporal Martin notices something unusual on the bomb itself. Part of the casing has a clean metallic shine where the rust appears to have come away. The detail bothers him. If the bomb has really been sitting around for roughly 80 years, he expects the entire surface to be heavily corroded. He raises the issue, but Will is not convinced there is anything suspicious about it. He argues that the device has clearly remained in good condition, pointing out that the time fuse was still functioning when they found it. Meanwhile, the thieves finally break through and gain access to the bank's lockers. Inside, they discover large amounts of cash along with gold bars. The gold is far too heavy to transport efficiently, so they leave it behind and focus on taking the money and smaller pieces of jewelry instead. Martin cannot shake his doubts. After showing the strange section of the casing to another soldier, he decides to bring the matter directly to Will once again. At that exact moment, the bomb suddenly starts ticking for a second time. Everyone immediately runs back to cover. Will believes the magnetic clock stopper has failed. With the situation becoming more dangerous by the minute, he comes up with a final plan. He intends to drill into the fuse by hand and inject a solution that could jam the mechanism. It is an extremely risky procedure, and because of the danger, it must be done using a manual drill rather than powered equipment. Just as preparations begin, a new problem emerges. Police monitoring the area detect a heat source coming from the generator being used by the robbers. The discovery forces Zuzana to intervene. She orders all work on the bomb to stop immediately. The drilling operation is suspended while she investigates the unexplained heat signature. She suspects there may still be people trapped somewhere inside the exclusion zone. Will strongly objects. He points out that they are in the middle of a highly dangerous bomb disposal procedure and that the mitigation wall is not even finished yet. However, Zuzana refuses to take the risk. If civilians are present, she is not willing to continue the operation until they are found. Below ground, one of the thieves opens a particular locker and removes a package from inside. Another member of the crew tells him to place it on the trolley with the rest of the stolen items. Back at the bomb site, Will notices Martin standing closer to the device than he should be. He orders him to move back to a protected position. Martin remains convinced that the clock stopper is the real problem and feels personally responsible for dealing with it. Will tries to talk him out of taking any unnecessary risks. At the same time, the thieves spot the police car returning to the area. Once again, they immediately stop making noise. The generator is shut down and everything goes quiet. Officers approach the entrance they believe the heat source came from, only to discover that it is locked. Realizing they cannot stay much longer, the robbers decide it is time to leave. With the generator turned off, the suspicious heat signature disappears from police equipment. Even so, one officer notices a man near the dustbin and raises the alarm. The thief takes off running. The officers attempt to pursue him but cannot get through the locked gate. Forced to improvise, they head back to their vehicle to retrieve bolt cutters and gain access. The crew quickly packs the cash and smaller pieces of jewelry into boxes and prepares to get out. At the same time, the situation around the bomb reaches a critical stage. Since the police have entered the restricted area, the army can no longer continue its work near the device. Their only option now is to pull back and wait under cover. Moments later, as officers finally cut through the locked gate, the ticking suddenly stops. An instant afterward, the bomb detonates. A massive blast rips through the area, sending debris and shockwaves across the construction site. Despite the violence of the explosion, the soldiers who had taken cover survive. The thieves immediately use the chaos to their advantage and begin escaping in different directions. One police officer trying to pursue them is injured during the confusion. Two members of the crew head outside, while another pair climbs onto the roof where 2 drones have been prepared in advance. The remaining 2 disappear into a sewer system below. Zuzana notices the men entering the sewer and assumes they must have been working underground the entire time, unaware of the evacuation orders. Up on the roof, the other thieves load the stolen boxes onto the waiting drones and launch them into the air. Police officers spot the drones flying overhead, but by then they are already moving away from the scene. The cargo is delivered to a woman waiting elsewhere. Once the transfer is complete, the 2 men on the roof make their own escape. Unfortunately for them, several police vehicles appear directly in their path. They turn and run, triggering a chase through the surrounding streets. Eventually, they reach an underground parking garage where they manage to lose the pursuing officers before dropping down into the same sewer network used by their partners. A commando unit is sent underground after them. The first 2 thieves remain hidden and avoid detection while the search continues. By this point, the other members of the gang have already emerged elsewhere and are waiting inside a van. They repeatedly try to contact their missing partners over the radio but receive no response. Elsewhere, an officer examining the scene enters the storage facility and begins looking around. Inside the van, the thieves collect the 2 boxes that were delivered by drone and decide they can no longer wait. Believing their missing partners may have been caught, they choose to leave without them. Almost immediately after the van drives away, the commandos emerge from the sewer. Back at the blast site, Martin still has unanswered questions. He remains unconvinced that the device was really a Second World War bomb. Because of his doubts, he asks Will to arrange testing of the explosive residue and chemical signatures. He wants confirmation before closing the case. Will eventually agrees. Since the army's involvement is nearly finished, he tells Zuzana to have the material analyzed. Meanwhile, the officer searching the storage unit uncovers evidence of a major bank robbery. He immediately reports the discovery to the control center. Far from the scene, the 2 thieves who stayed hidden in the sewer finally surface and radio their location. The others drive out to meet them, and before long, the entire group is reunited. One of the robbers, Corrales, tells the others to move the boxes farther toward the rear of the van. If they are stopped by police, he does not want the stolen property visible from the front. Soon afterward, they encounter a police checkpoint. The gang presents forged documents claiming they work for a water company. Their appearance helps sell the story. Covered in grime and carrying the smell of the sewer, they look exactly like workers finishing a difficult job. Satisfied with the paperwork, the officers allow them to continue on their way. At nearly the same moment, Zuzana notices the water company logo on the boiler suits recovered from the scene. She immediately alerts nearby units. When the message reaches the checkpoint, the officer there realizes a matching van has already passed through. By then, however, the thieves are well ahead of them. They pull over briefly, remove the company markings from the vehicle, and continue their escape without attracting any further attention. Believing they have successfully slipped away, the gang celebrates as they drive on. Zuzana arrives at the scene of the break-in and begins examining the storage units for herself. Her attention quickly settles on Unit 79. Wanting to know exactly who had access to it, she orders her team to obtain the names of the owners of every nearby flat, with particular focus on the people connected to number 79. Not far away, the Afghan family that was evacuated earlier is still waiting outside the security perimeter. They approach the officers and explain that they have a flight to catch and need to return home. As soon as the police learn which apartment they live in, their plans change. The family is asked to accompany the officers because their address is directly connected to the investigation. They live in Flat 79. Back at the construction site, a colonel and a senior army general arrive to review what happened. They question Will about why he never reported his concerns regarding the bomb's appearance. Will already has a reputation for challenging authority, and his record includes previous incidents of insubordination. At the same time, everyone knows he has lost fellow soldiers during difficult operations in the past. Will defends his actions. According to him, his first responsibility was making the 500-kilogram bomb safe. Everything else came second. Meanwhile, the robbers' van reaches a remote countryside location. Once there, they are instructed to change out of their work clothes. Unknown to the others, 2 members of the crew have secretly kept small portions of the stolen valuables hidden in their pockets. Back in London, Zuzana begins questioning the Afghan family. The elderly father explains that Rahim gave them access to the apartment. Rahim then tells her that 2 men arrived carrying what appeared to be legitimate documents from the landlord. They requested the keys to the storage area, and because the paperwork looked official, the family handed them over. The men never returned the keys afterward. Rahim explains that they are immigrants and tend to trust official documents when presented with them. If someone arrives with the proper paperwork, they usually comply rather than challenge it. Zuzana listens carefully and tells him she understands the situation. After finishing the interview, she authorizes the removal of the police cordon. At the countryside, the gang finally examines the mysterious package that Corrales removed from the bank. Inside are uncut diamonds. Corrales reveals that the stones are worth an enormous amount of money, estimating their value at around $30 million. The announcement immediately changes the mood in the room. One of the robbers insists that everything must be divided equally between the crew. Corrales appears to agree, but a short time later he steps outside and places a phone call. The others notice him making the call and become suspicious. Their concerns are justified. Without warning, a group of armed men storms the hideout and attacks the robbers. One member of the gang attempts to escape, but is eventually caught. It soon becomes clear that Corrales has betrayed them. The attackers work for his cousin, Ludo. After overpowering the crew, Ludo's men tie them up and lock them away. While the others remain restrained, Robber X quietly begins working on freeing his hands. Elsewhere, Ludo starts questioning Corrales about the diamonds. He refuses to believe the valuation he has been given and wants to know how Corrales even knew the stones were hidden in the bank. Corrales finally explains the connection. The diamonds belong to a former employer. Years earlier, he worked for the man by transporting valuable stones through conflict zones, moving them across borders without attracting attention and storing them in the bank himself. Eventually, that employer tried to have him killed. Stealing the diamonds was Corrales' way of settling the score. Ludo asks whether he can keep a share for himself. Corrales reminds him that they already had an agreement and warns him not to become greedy. Instead, Ludo demands half of everything. The disagreement quickly escalates into an argument. In frustration, Ludo grabs one of the diamonds and smashes it. The stone breaks. Everyone immediately realizes something is wrong. Real diamonds should not shatter like that. Corrales immediately starts checking the rest of the stones. Every diamond in the package is fake. The discovery sends Ludo into a rage. He calls his men back into the room and accuses Corrales of deceiving him. Corrales insists he knows nothing about the switch and repeatedly tells him the stones were supposed to be genuine. Ludo refuses to believe a word of it. He brings a wrench down onto Corrales' hand. Even through the pain, Corrales gives the same answer. He claims he has no idea how the fake diamonds ended up there. Ludo is done listening. He orders his men to throw Corrales into the trunk of a car. He plans to take him to a workshop where he can continue questioning him. As for the other robbers, Ludo decides he will deal with them later. Back in London, the laboratory results finally arrive. Zuzana delivers the report to the army colonel, who immediately contacts Will. The findings confirm that the bomb was not a Second World War device at all. The chemical composition traces directly back to the British Army. At the same time, Rahim climbs onto the terrace of his building and retrieves a hidden package. Inside are the real diamonds. Meanwhile, Robber X succeeds in freeing his hands. He unties the others, and together they look for a way out. One member of the crew has already died from a gunshot wound, leaving only the survivors to continue. They manage to get the van running and smash their way through the door to escape. Unknown to everyone else, X had prepared for betrayal from the very beginning. He secretly placed a tracker on Corrales' clothing because he never fully trusted him. Locked inside the trunk, Corrales pulls out his phone and sends a message containing his live location to someone he believes can help him. Elsewhere, Rahim carefully hides the diamonds inside the handle of his suitcase. His brother is aware of the entire arrangement. As investigators continue digging into the case, Zuzana discovers another important connection. Flat 79 belongs to Corrales' uncle, the same relative who expelled him from the family business 9 years earlier. At nearly the same moment, Martin conducts a closer inspection of the magnetic clock stopper. What he finds raises serious concerns. The device itself is functioning correctly. The problem is that someone tampered with the equipment. Rahim gathers his family and heads to the airport. Out in the countryside, X and the surviving robbers use the tracker to locate Corrales. They intercept Ludo's vehicle, surround it, and attack his men. A violent fight breaks out around the car. During the struggle, X manages to grab one of the gangsters' firearms. Inside the trunk, Corrales hears gunshots erupting outside. Moments later, the robbers drag him out of the vehicle. X is not interested in explanations. He pulls a plastic bag over Corrales' head and begins suffocating him. Corrales struggles desperately for air, convinced he is about to die. Then a gunshot rings out. X is hit. The shot came from Major Will, who arrives at the scene and intervenes before Corrales can be killed. Around the same time, Zuzana reviews CCTV footage connected to the robbery. The images confirm that one of the suspects is Corrales. Realizing he may try to leave the country, she immediately passes the information to airport authorities. After escaping the confrontation, Corrales makes his way to the area surrounding the airport. To avoid attracting attention, he checks into a nearby hotel using a false identity. Once settled, he begins preparing his exit and purchases a ticket for a flight to Marrakesh. Elsewhere, Martin shares his concerns about Will with Zuzana. He explains that the Major has struggled psychologically since his time in Afghanistan and reminds her that Will once volunteered to remain there longer than required. Zuzana then shows him a photograph of Corrales. To her surprise, Martin recognizes someone else. He identifies Rahim. Years earlier, Rahim served as his interpreter in Afghanistan, and Will was responsible for helping Rahim and his family relocate to safety in the United Kingdom. The connection changes everything. Corrales also spent time in Afghanistan working around a gemstone operation, which means all three names now point back to the same place. By the time investigators start putting the pieces together, Will has already disappeared. Not long afterward, authorities receive information that Corrales has purchased a ticket to Morocco. A commando team is dispatched to intercept him. However, while officers focus on screening passengers boarding that flight, Corrales quietly avoids them. Using a forged passport, he boards a completely different plane bound for Istanbul. The investigation continues to uncover new links. Zuzana learns that the security guard working at the construction site on the night before the bomb was discovered was none other than Rahim's brother. Following another lead, she visits Will's house. Inside the basement, she finds material that raises even more questions. There are books devoted to explosives and bomb disposal, along with newspaper clippings about soldiers Will once served with in Afghanistan, many of whom lost their lives there. Meanwhile, Will has successfully reached Turkey. There, he reunites with Corrales. The truth finally comes out. Will had been working with Corrales all along. When Corrales' operation began attracting attention, Will deliberately interfered with the clock stopper. By causing the device to fail, he ensured the explosion would happen sooner, creating confusion and buying them valuable time to get away before investigators could connect the robbery to them. Not long afterward, Rahim joins them. With all three finally together, they arrange for the stolen diamonds to be sold. The stones bring in $90 million. Once the money is collected, they divide it evenly among themselves. Their partnership complete, the three men head into the city and eventually separate, each going his own way. The story then jumps back 10 years. In Afghanistan, Corrales is working for a powerful employer who ultimately betrays him. A group of mercenaries kidnaps him and transports him through a dangerous region. Not far away, Will and Rahim are operating together. While moving through the area, Will notices the presence of terrorists nearby. Before he can react, he accidentally steps onto a pressure plate. The ground around them is filled with improvised explosive devices. At that very moment, the mercenaries arrive with Corrales. Then, disaster strikes. One of the hidden explosives detonates beneath their vehicle, throwing the situation into chaos. Gunfire erupts as the terrorists open fire on everyone caught in the area. Amid the confusion, Corrales sees an opportunity to escape. He comes face to face with Will. Rather than treating each other as enemies, they strike a deal. Will tells him that if he helps them survive, they will help him in return. Following Will's instructions, Corrales moves toward the explosives and begins disabling them. Will hands his weapon to Rahim so they can provide cover while he works. Carefully cutting the wires, Corrales manages to neutralize the threat and saves everyone involved. That shared experience becomes the beginning of the bond that eventually leads all three men to the events of the present day. My name is Sid, and that was the recap of the 2025 action thriller movie, Fuze. How did you like this story? Let me know in the comments below.